What's going on, party people? Happy Thursday night. Hope you guys are doing well. There's Will. Go ahead and pull him up. Appreciate you guys joining us. Looks like a few people coming over from some other spaces that are going on. Looks like some good stuff's going on tonight. Hopefully this will contribute to the value that's here on Twitter. Got some special guests. Brennan should be joining us shortly. We got Tax Tone. Got Eric here, Wealth Wolf. Also got Kevin going to join us. A few other people. We'll go over tax strategies with the CPAs that we've got up here. We'll talk some wealth and some business, wealth management, all the fun stuff. See kind of how things go. I don't know. I don't really have a impromptu list for tonight, but with the fantastic people that are joining, I'm sure that it'll be value packed. Brennan, how are you this evening?
Hey man, how are you?
Doing good, brother. Appreciate you joining.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I randomly tweeted that out and you responded. I never would have thought, man.
Yeah, man. I'm always up for a good conversation with some smart people. So I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, appreciate it. Did you have anything in particular that you wanted to promote or talk about?
No, for one, guys, I just want to be here to help anybody out there in the crowd that has questions or anything. The topics that we're talking about is taxes, wealth, and business discussion stuff. So we'd love just to stay on topic and help some people out.
Yeah, 100%. What you said you had a presentation before this. Were you dealing with
a few things. I had a Wealth Squad presentation, which is a huge Discord on Twitter. Some of you guys might know that. And then secondly, I had my budgetdog Academy. It's my own group, and we had a presentation back to back. So it's been a busy day.
Yeah, sounds like it, man. So tell us a little bit about that. What's budgetdog Academy?
Yeah, so budgetdog Academy is a group that I created. It's through a platform called School. And it basically creates a roadmap for any individual out there that, might want to pay down debt, wants to learn how to invest, has no idea where to begin with their finances. And it's really a comprehensive outlook on everything, right? So it goes from obviously the budgeting component, which is the most obvious in investing. We all know those. But also insurances, estate planning, tax strategy, credit, like literally anything you can think of from a personal finance standpoint. I want people from start to finish, A to Z roadmap type feel, and kind of one-on-one experience the whole entire way. And it's a 6-month program. So, I don't have a whole lot of people in there. It's a pretty limited exclusive program, but for those that want to take it to the next level, it's the place to be. I can tell you that.
That's awesome, bro.
Yeah. It's been a blessing, man. We started it in June, 2022, and we, have run, I think, 300 people through there at this point in time.
Do you have anything on my background as far as like what I do or what I'm involved in?
Yeah, no, a little bit from your Twitter, but outside of that, no.
Okay. So my main consulting business is I work with business owners to increase the multiple prior to exit. Most people are 45 to 60 years old that are my clients, want to exit within the next 1 to 3 years. And then I've also formed a Digital Ascension Group, which is the only digital family office suite of professionals that is competent. All the professionals are competent in digital assets. So it's the only one geared specifically toward crypto liquidity events. So just exactly what you're talking about there, estate planning, tax mitigation, wealth management, investments, all that stuff.
I love that.
Wealth Wolf, did you have your hand up, man?
I did. Jake, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You started talking, I was like, oh, my hand's up. You can finish.
All good, man.
I actually I had probably a good thing to kick the call off, like a little case study that I figured to throw out there. So, I won't get into the background of how I got into the space, but I'm in the wealth management business. And I do work on a project. I'm based here in Colorado. I have a team. There's 6 of us collectively, and we're working on a project that's across multiple chains, but we started out in the Cardano space. and we actually were approached the other day. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Like, how do folks that have traditional digital wealth, crypto wealth, transition into, the traditional space, right? For traditional, what I would call investments into, whatever it is. I mean, we've talked about, you and I have talked about SPVs offline, but this guy in particular has got $1 million sitting in crypto, and he wants to invest in a project, in a business. And so I'm curious, like, what's the best way that you guys know how to do that? Will and I were talking tonight about, do we funnel that through a trust? So I'm curious to hear from some CPAs and some pros.
I mean, so I can give you what I would do in that situation. He's got a couple options, and they are limited, unfortunately, until that becomes regulated and it's held by fiduciaries and they'll offer lines of credit. I mean, ideally, that would be the best scenario, is he takes a collateral line of credit against that digital asset. Hopefully, it's fairly stable. I don't know what he owns. And I mean, now the market's down, right? So hopefully things appreciate and go up from here. And this would be not financial advice. Let me just go ahead and put the disclaimer out here for this space. Anything said here is not financial advice. All this information is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Always speak with your CPA, tax advisor, or financial advisor before making any financial or investment decisions. So there's that piece. But yeah, in my mind, taking a collateralized loan against that crypto and then deploying that into traditional assets would be an ideal way to do it without any tax ramification. And then there's a few other options where, like Link2 provides private equity, and you can move your crypto into an Uphold wallet and fund the investments on their platform with your crypto directly. So it just depends on what asset class he's trying to get into, and if it were a business, I would try to figure out the collateralized loan. Nexo is no longer offering that here in the U.S., so I know Circle will do it for your Bitcoin, and then you've got Aave and Compound for Ethereum. So, outside of that, he's kind of limited and handcuffed. What about you, Brennan? Do you deal with any Web3 type stuff?
I don't really. I mean, outside of my basic investments myself, like I don't do anything on a professional level with them.
Yeah, you're kind of handcuffed. Do you deal with taxes? Are you crypto tax certified?
I'm not actually. So I am a CPA, but my focus actually is more so personal finance. I've kind of drifted into that space versus like filing taxes. It's just not something that is real interesting to me.
Well, a little less liability for you also, right?
Yeah, that too. And it's from a scalability standpoint, it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
I work with another gentleman. This is a CPA out of Florida, and he has wealth management, CPA, accounting, payroll, and one other financial service all rolled into what he does at Tideland Financial. Keith is his name. And he provides that suite of products to his clients. There's an upfront fee, and then it's $1,500 a month after that. He kind of sits between your wealth manager, your CPA, and any of your other advisors, and gives you a holistic view of things. Or if you don't have any of those, he can fill the gaps. So that's really the only way I've seen that. It's the insurance piece is the other thing that he provides. So he'll do, and I've sent him people for this. Do you deal with infinite banking at all?
Was that to me?
It was.
I don't. I stay pretty traditional. From that standpoint, infinite banking. I mean, I know the concept. I understand it. I don't know if I'm a big fan of it in general. For the average person,
Yeah.
I gotta remember my target market, right? It's a little different than nuanced or very, very niche down, or a small subset of the population. It's more so the broad majority.
Right. People that are working their 9 to 5 and trying to put a retirement plan together.
Exactly.
So would you recommend infinite banking for only high net worth to ultra high net worth individuals?
It makes sense. So I'll give you an example. I work with business owners that are normally doing somewhere between $1 million and $10 million in top line. So their take home tends to be 6 figures plus. And there's certain situations where we get to the end of the year and they've got some cash laying around. And if we've already leveraged Section 179 and purchased a vehicle, or maybe we do a combination of these two, you don't get the 100% write-off anymore. It's an 80% this year. Inside Section 179, which is heavy equipment and software, but a vehicle over 6,000 pounds qualifies for that. So say you go finance an F-250, it's $100,000. You could write off 80,000 of that this year, even if you only put 20 down and finance the rest of it.
Right.
That TikTok told me it was free.
Yeah, they lied on that. But the infinite banking piece, yeah, if you've got 100K that you need to write off on your taxes, it's kind of a 3-prong approach on this. So you'd pre-fund a whole life insurance policy. It can be indexed or universal life also. There's a few different options. And then you get the write-off because you're doing that through your business. You get the life insurance, obviously, which is beneficial. And then we've got fiduciaries that like Fidelity or Goldman Sachs that'll issue lines of credit against that life insurance policy that you've pre-funded at a 3% loan. So if you went to go get a traditional business loan, you're looking, rates are up now, even from where they were. So somewhere between 6 and 8% is what you're going to be looking at. It's a good option.
As far as the pre-funding of the life insurance policy, is that determined? Like, how do they determine how much you're able to overfund your account? Because I've heard there's a difference between just pre-funding and overfunding, right?
Yeah, you can. To be completely honest with you, I kind of leave that up to the people I deal with for that piece. I have a very broad understanding of it. And again, they kind of get into the semantics of which type of policy it's going to be and the limits on that side. I'm not competent there.
Yeah, Jake, we're getting in the weeds right out of the gate, man. Just going full gut.
Kevin always has really good questions.
Oh, thank you.
We went really deep, real fast.
Yeah, Kevin. So I can add a bit to that too.
I didn't know we were warming up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah. It didn't take us long to get to the dance at all. We just got right after it. So my firm, I'm based in Colorado. We actually outsource a lot of that to a tax planning group. That's their expertise, because you're right. Like there's a lot of things that can go into this. Ultra high net worth individuals have been leveraging this concept for, decades. But it's tricky. Yeah. You gotta really have a good team that knows what you're doing. And we do that for some smaller folks, but the business owner clientele that we work with, and, specifically ultra high net worth folks, you can really, it's worth its weight in gold, frankly. It's not cheap to do that type of planning, but man, if you can execute that type of strategy right, you're set up. So, yeah.
Yeah. All these things are tools, right? And so, you and I had a discussion the other day about IULs. I have a particular distaste for those, but I think there are certain situations in which they make sense for people. Obviously, IRAs and 401ks, like budgetdog, is going to have you max out, have their place for sure also. Brennan, give us like 3 steps if somebody is just starting out, and maybe they're in some debt. Like, what does that look like to kind of get out of that hole?
Sure. Yeah. So, I think it's a real foundational and fundamental approach to it is making sure you have the right financial statements in place. And my background is, I was at Deloitte for 6 years, manager there, and I was able to kind of understand how a company operates from not only a control perspective, but also just a financial perspective. And I kind of applied these principles to personal finances and made it simple. So I think the most basic and obvious one is figuring out what your free cash flow is. If you don't know what your free cash flow is, that's the lifeblood of your finances, and that's how you move forward at a fast rate. And so first things first is a budget, just to understand, hey, how much cash flow do I have what's the shovel I have to operate with, and where do I put those funds? And then once you have that number, now it's a matter of figuring out what's the most efficient use of my money. But one thing I often bring in is obviously it's bigger than a spreadsheet. One of my big things is it's bigger than math, because it's not always going to be, obviously, any low interest debt, there's no reason to pay it off theoretically based on the numbers. But, if you have a bed loan of $75 a month, 3,500, I don't know if that's consumer debt's a real good use of your money at the end of the day. So it's really understanding your goals, your strategies, what you're trying to accomplish, and all of those things, understanding your free cash flow, and then mapping it out and figuring out, hey, if I put all this money to, let's say, debt payoff, how fast is that going to, take me? And then also, what's the opportunity cost of that? And calculating all those numbers out. And, I work with people all the time, and I actually worked with somebody on Saturday. She was like, I think I have to file bankruptcy. She was crying to me on the phone call, and I was like, I don't think so, based on the numbers that you actually shared with me, but let's deep dive into this. And so I was working with her, and I found a way to debt freedom in about 12 months. And it wasn't anything revolutionary, but it's using the right foundational tools to tell you that answer without you having an emotional response, if that makes sense. And that's kind of the approach I use with all my clients, is just good old like traditional stuff that works, and it's going to work over and over and over. And if you're able to apply that and understand the concepts inside and out, you're going to move at a really fast rate. You're going to build a lot of wealth, and it might not be exciting. It might not be crypto. It might not be artificial intelligence type level education, but it's going to impact your life in a way that stuff probably can't for most people.
Do you ever suggest that people double down and invest in themselves to create a higher income?
I'm a huge fan of that. I talk about investing in yourself quite regularly. It's something I do personally, and I speak I practice what I preach type deal. But whether that's education, whether that's a skill set, whatever that is, I think there's such an ROI that's unbeatable on any financial product out there, that if you double down on yourself, and I speak from experience, because I like I said, I created my own business and left the 9 to 5 at Deloitte, and I could have continued to go that route, worked my way up to partner and been fine, but I was like, I'm going to double down on my skill sets and my education and turn this business into a real life. And that's kind of what I did. So I'm a big believer in spending money on positive ROI activities. And that could be a number of things. That's obviously, it could start with just buying a course, or, buying education, or going to a mastermind, or buying mentorship, or whatever that may be. But as long as every dollar you have, there's a positive activity or positive ROI on that, it's always a smart decision. I think it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I love that. And I would completely agree. I think the fast acceleration for me was, so I made it a point over the last 2 years to meet at least one new person per day and have an intimate conversation with them. And doing that, I joined 3 different masterminds, which was a chunk of change. And I also paid out a bunch of money that, made me uncomfortable at the time. But in doing that, because of the individuals that I put myself around and had conversations with, it accelerated my earning capacity significantly. And so I always would encourage, and it's scary. It's not an easy thing to do, especially if it's all the money that you have, like you're talking about with a budget. Like, let's say you do have this debt looming over your head, and you can make the minimum payments on your credit card, and you've got like $500 every month left over. Like, putting that toward self-education, or putting yourself in an environment where you could level up your skill set to produce a higher income for yourself, is the obvious choice when you're like looking at it from a logical view. But at the same time, when you're in the moment, it can be very scary to do that. So
I totally agree. I'll give you guys a good example, if you don't mind me rambling. So, with my business and personally, I mean, I don't like to publicly share like revenue numbers exactly, but I'll use multiples in this example. So I was doing pretty well for myself, definitely better than Deloitte. And I did that for maybe 6-7 months, and I was ready to level up. And so I was talking with a lot of business coaches, and their price was $6,000 a month. So as you can imagine, you put that on an annual basis, it's $72,000 a year. And there was a lot of promising results. I had a lot of good, conversations with others that used them. And it was at the point where long story short, I had to increase my income for a lot of the life situations that have been thrown at us. Long story short, we had to move across the country recently for my daughter's health. And so one thing I was gung ho on doing is increasing my income. And I was willing to take that chance on that $6,000, which at the time was a little more significant. I put it all in. I threw the $6,000 at them. And I had some things built in the contract that kind of protected me. But at the end of the day, $6,000 I threw there. And I worked with them I'm still working with them today. It's been almost a year, but they've 5, 6, 7x my income. Just from having the right mentorship, the right tools, the right guidance. They're in the business. They're masters at what they do. And it was the best ROI I've ever spent. I recommend this team to pretty much anybody and everybody. But I spent $6,000 up front, and I am now spending $72,000 a year plus commissions. And I don't blink at that at this point in time because of the investment I made in myself early on. And it's by far the best ROI I've ever had in my whole entire life. But I remember the feeling, like you mentioned, in the very beginning, it was a scary feeling. It wasn't even like that we couldn't afford it or couldn't pay it, but it's still $6,000. That's not chump change. And I was willing to take the loss, and if I messed this up, but I used as much due diligence as I possibly could. I really, really studied the game. I really said, okay, even if I pay them, it's not like a magic ticket. I got to put the work in too. And that's what I did. And, it's unbelievable what they've created for me and helped me create. I mean, something I would never have dreamt of years ago, but I can't emphasize how important it is to invest in yourself. And I think it's scale. I think when you first start, it's not $6,000, right? It's $100. It's $2,000. You grow with time, but it's the mindset that you operate out of in the very beginning that changes your entire life. And if you start with the $100 course and you work your way up to the $10,000 mastermind, I can promise you that your ROI is going to be incredible if you find the right people and, put yourself in the best position.
Yeah, I love that. I'm sure
awesome.
somebody out there that's feeling that right now and probably in this or listens to this later, and they're in a position where all they have is the extra $100 or all they have is $2,000. Where did you find those people? They were through your network or a mastermind or?
It was through it was just a mutual contact. Somebody knew somebody that was like, hey, I think this would be a good fit. And I was like, all right, well, let's check it out type deal. And it was mainly networking. I mean, I think the biggest thing, I naturally just kind of network. I always hate forced networking when you have to go to the corporate events and no one likes that and stuff like that. I've always hated that. But, naturally, I'm a really good networker. And just because I like to speak to people, I like to get to know people and ask, I'm curious about like their situation more so than myself. Like, what can I get from you? I don't care about that. I'm asking them, tell me about yourself. Like, I'm actually genuinely curious. And I think that leads to a lot of good relationships and learning about other people's skill sets. How can you leverage what you have versus what I have? And how can we build as a team type stuff? And I think that's where it's come from, just mainly networking.
Yeah, it's the same for me. The ROI on just meeting other quality people that are in alignment with my core values and goals, like-minded people, has generated far more returns for me than almost anything else.
Good evening,
Jake,
Dan. How's everyone?
Can I add something real quick?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, just real quick. A super low cost investment that will help anyone really. There's a guy named Keith Ferrazzi. Keith Ferrazzi's he's had, I think he was with Deloitte actually. But then he was with some other firms. But anyway, he authored a book called Never Eat Alone. And early on in my career, when I was in my 20s, I used to work on a sales desk here in Colorado. I was banging out 110 phone calls, and I'm like, wow, this is very impersonal. And one of the first books that I read was Keith Ferrazzi's Never Eat Alone, and it's a super low cost investment, but he'll give you some really good pointers, and I found it really valuable. So I figured I'd throw it out there.
I think books also are a fantastic investment, and millionaires will tell you that, right? Warren Buffett reads almost more than anybody else. I mean, it has the free time to do so also. So that's the caveat there. But the more knowledge that you can consume through books or spaces like this, I think that puts you far ahead. Thomas, you joined us up here. What do you have going on this evening?
Hey, guys. Well, I want to applaud everyone for being here because just sitting back listening a little bit, I firmly believe in self-awareness, right? So the best education you can get, you can go to Harvard and drop, $500,000, whatever it is, cost to go there, or whatever high profile school. But in this day and age, it's too easy not to make friends. It's too easy not to get an education. And education doesn't mean you have a sheepskin on your wall. It means that you've absorbed information and are absolutely applying it to your daily habits and behaviors. For instance, Brennan, we've spoken a few times, and once I just happened to pop in this space tonight. I saw him. He was familiar, so it made me feel a little bit more comfortable to jump in and open up. But so I can get really granular and really personal. Just depends on the temperature of the group. And I don't say that to say, well, I'm going to be braggadocious. I'm actually going to go the other way. Today, I dropped off 6 years of taxes, guys, and ladies and gentlemen, to my CPA, because I was so convicted on doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on myself that I wasn't paying attention to myself. And what I'm getting at is I was so driven to, sell the next house, sell the next property. Through this, I went through, a divorce, etc. Just kind of brushed things off. I'll just say like that. I didn't, call neglect, but brushed things off and went through a rough patch. But I continue to, again, read. I'm reading a Matthew McConaughey book right now called Green Lights. So if you find yourself getting into a slump, we all can put on the suits and go to the next business meeting or next networking event, take the next course. But the biggest investment you're going to put is into yourself. And it's not always the courses. It's not always the next guru out there, Grant Cardone or Gary Vee and, Ed Milet and all these guys that are out there just doing it and been doing it for a long time. But if you don't find yourself having enough humility to speak as I'm doing now, you're not going to own it. I guess what I'm trying to put a title, you're not going to own, you got to own where you're at in this position. I've taken classes, again, I'm college educated. I have a network that, to be quite honest, up until probably 4 years ago, I'm like, oh, I can call on so-and-so, they'll buy a house for me. But when the phone didn't ring, I'm like, well, what's the problem? Well, I'm the freaking problem, is that you're not asking for the business. So there comes that personal touch into it that, again, I don't want to start rambling here, but when I dropped all my tax stuff to the CPA, I had everything fine. I was unorganized. And that's just something I'd be self-aware about. Now that's been going on for the last probably year. We've been working at getting all this stuff together. I feel like such a relief. Probably the reason why I've said, I'm going to jump up here and talk a little bit. But now I get to have that foundational stuff that Brendan was talking about earlier, is that now you can go out and perform. And for me, I'll be egotistical here, and it's holding up millions. It's holding up millions of dollars for me to, have everything in place, and it's ignorant to the fact that I haven't been investing in myself. So, again, I don't want to get on my soapbox here, but it's taking that time for yourself where it's, 10:30 at night? How many of your competitors or how many of your colleagues, how many people that work for you right now are sleeping? They're like, taking the night off, I'm exhausted. But yet you're listening to me babble about, my soapbox, or coming to at least get a nugget of something that can add to what you're going to do tomorrow. And again, it comes back to behaviors and habits.
Yeah, I think self-reflection is a very important piece. Being self-aware of your shortcomings and being humble about them enough that you can ask for help. and take care of those issues. I see a lot of people, including myself on occasion, put things off that need to be done, or sweep things under the rug that, you say you can push things off till tomorrow. But if it's on my to-do list today, I do my damnedest to get to everything. And you don't always get there, but, yeah, I agree with you. If you're putting in that extra effort, getting up early, staying up late, applying yourself in certain areas and reflecting, I think it definitely makes a big difference.
And just to clarify, so last couple of years, again, without getting ugly, as like Brandon didn't want to expose anything, but I've done well for myself. Like, I'm cash flush and I, bring it in, but I was just reckless and abandoned with it. It's, then you start looking at it and it's like, what are you building? Are you building a train wreck, or et cetera? But so having money's never been the issue, but it's kind of where I want to take it and, define. So.
Yeah, on one of the last spaces I had, which I see a lot of new faces in here, and I appreciate you guys joining us. But I talked about most wealthy individuals that I've run into have a 10-year plan. They look at things in decades. If you listen to Patrick Bet-David, he has a life plan, and he kind of breaks things down in 20-year intervals for big themes of those pieces. And he consistently reviews that plan, and obviously things change and things happen in your life where it doesn't always go exactly to what you have laid out. And sometimes when you get started on it, you don't even know, you just have the end goal in mind. You don't even know where to get started. But at least once you have that written down, you can kind of brainstorm and work backwards from there. So I think that's a big piece. If you're building towards something and you understand what it is you're trying to create, then you're much more likely to end up at that location, or at least close to it. Whereas if you just kind of wander through life, and you can do really well, but if you don't have that at least 5 or 10-year plan in place, you're still kind of aimless, in my opinion. Is that something that you implement with your group there, Brennan?
Oh, 100%. I think it always comes down to a plan. I'm very organized, type A, CPA-like. So, I implement a lot of this stuff, planning exercises with my students. And even amongst my personal life, everything's mapped out from, I'd say, 5 to 10 years for sure, very detailed. And obviously beyond that, I hope I live tomorrow. But I still have somewhat of a general framework of what I want to accomplish. And if you don't, I think you're living kind of a meaningless life. I think you're just kind of going through the motions. And like you said, you might do decent. You might kind of see some success here and there. But if you're not real intentional, I think that's one of the biggest words I like a lot is intention. Just be very intentional about what you're trying to accomplish, whether that be, a physical goal or a financial goal or a religious goal or a family goal, whatever that is. I have I'm sitting right behind a whiteboard right now, and I'll tell you exactly what's on it. It literally says, buy first real estate deal, and then I'm going to say hit X revenue dollars number in 2023. I know specifically what I'm trying to do in 2023, and I just turned around to look at that, right? And so I think that goes hand in hand with anybody that's successful has a plan, and they know what they're trying to accomplish before they actually accomplish it. Because in order to get there, you're going to have to map out somewhat of a plan. And life, I'm living proof of, hey, not everything goes to plan. I'm sitting here in Texas. I lived in Cincinnati, Ohio less than 4 weeks ago, but my daughter had a very rare health condition. We had to come here for the best treatment in the world. So here we are. That wasn't part of the plan, but we were able to adjust because we had a plan. And that's really, really powerful. Instead of just falling off and just going through life and letting life happen to you, decide what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Davis, you joined us. How are you doing this evening?
Pretty good. I look that you're talking about longer term time horizons because I have difficulty with that myself. Like people say, hey, what are you going to do in 10 years? What are you going to do in 20 years? And myself, I'm thinking, what is the world even going to be like in 20 years? And am I going to be there? What's the point? So it's really good to have this perspective.
Yeah, and I actually have a spreadsheet. If anybody wants to DM me, I'm happy to send you what I've put together for planning this out. So I use OKRs, which is objectives and key results.
I love it.
And you can build out, basically you work backward from a 10-year goal, and you don't have a detailed plan for the 5 years before that. You just have a 10-year, a 5-year, a 3-year, and a 1-year goal. Okay. And they kind of build on one another, and they're very broad. And then when you get into the 1 year, you're going to have quarterly objectives that you can break down into monthly key results. And then each one of those monthly key results, you break down into weekly key results. That becomes the objective. And then you can work into daily habits and things that you're doing on a regular basis that are going to be the stepping stones toward that 10-year goal. Because I think a lot of people get lost in the weeds. They're like, how do I translate this 10-year crazy dream that I have back to something I can do today? And so I've spent a lot of time trying to figure that out and done it for myself, and it's been probably one of the biggest game changers for me.
Jake, I absolutely love OKRs, specifically outcome focused versus output focused, right? So like, meaning like, I don't want to just have, I'll just use weight room training as an easy example. I don't want to just do 5 more reps, right? I want my upper back to be more wide, or whatever the case may be, right? It's more about the outcome, the perceived benefit, the value that you're bringing, right? Versus just focusing on how much of a thing am I needing to do. Your key result may be an outcome, or an output focused situation, but you're really looking to make an impact, right? So OKRs are something I come across in my job. I'm currently an agile coach at UBS working in.
Uh-oh. Did I lose you?
Yeah, I can't hear him.
Okay. I thought it was just me. I thought maybe my phone was messed up. Well, I'll continue on that tangent. I think they are fantastic, and to his point, I think the objective, whatever the outcome is, does need to. It doesn't have to have tangible numbers, but the key results that are going to lead to that objective do have to be tangible numbers in some way, so that you can measure them. And that can be implemented in your finances. It could be implemented in the weight room. It could be implemented in your diet. There's, time with your family, vacations, your investments. And the other piece that I think a lot of people have a hard time with, and I know I did for a long time, in school, they made things seem like it would move in a linear fashion, like a 45-degree angle from 0 up to 100, right, on the chart. But in reality, sometimes things move in steps. But I would say 95% of the time, it looks like an exponential growth curve. So you're going to drag along the bottom for a long time, even though you're doing the right things and not seeing a bunch of results. And then you slightly lift off the bottom. You're starting to compound. It's the snowball that's, accumulating a little bit of snow. And then there'll be a point of inflection where things go vertical. And that's when most people say you're an overnight success. But most of the time, that person's been working behind the scenes for 2, 5, 10 years before they have that explosive moment. And again, that can be applied to fitness, finances, your career, whatever that may be, social media. I'm sure Brennan can speak to that. I'm sure he's been on Twitter for a pretty decent amount of time and probably very consistent with his output for content there, and seen the compound effect of that. Can you speak to that, Brennan?
Yeah, this hits home, honestly, because I felt everything you were saying. I was like, man, it's really what's happened recently. Is like a lot of, when I first started this thing, there wasn't really a business in mind, if I'm being honest. It was just putting out good quality content and speaking about our story. And we really connected, evidently, with a lot of people through Twitter. And I don't, on Instagram, I'm actually have a larger presence over there. I was just being real. I was just kind of talking about like what was going on. We connected with a lot of people through our debt payoff journey and all that kind of stuff, and wealth building journey. And obviously with my professional background, I was able to kind of start helping people. But like initially people would reach out to me and they're like, hey man, like, how do you do this? What tools do you use? And I was like, I don't really have anything readily available for anybody. I was really just trying to help people in any way possible, and I realized there was a market for it. I was like, when I first got on social media, I didn't realize. I mean, guys, the name is Budget Dog. Let's talk about that first, where that came from. I mean, that was literally, I was looking at my dog in the living room. This is God honest truth, and my wife and I were thinking like, well, I knew Instagram, I knew social media, but we didn't really know where the name, like what kind of name we'd do out there, and we didn't want to do like traditional stuff. I was like, well, why don't we marry like two niches? Like, I know people love pets, and I know people love finance, which is obviously what I was going to talk about. And I wasn't really comfortable getting on camera and getting on in voicing and all that kind of stuff. And initially, it's amazing how far I've come. But that was 3 years ago, June 2019. And I looked at my dog like literally in the face, like, and I was like, oh, Budget Dog, that'd be kind of a cool name. So that's actually like where it started. And I've grown into something I would never have guessed from the beginning. But being able to put that, I mean, I was every single day getting on IG Lives, getting on Twitter Spaces, tweeting consistent quality content, posting videos on Instagram, YouTube, and all those kind of things, just doing it every single day. To the point I just loved what I did. I still do. And so I never really looked at it as like, hey, one of these days I'm going to break out and be parabolic. But if I really look back and give myself any bit of credit, which I typically don't do, I'd say in October of this past year, November of this past year was parabolic from what I was doing prior to that. Doing very well, like I said, but that parabolic moment when I think family and friends notice like, hey, this is not a business. I have 9 people underneath me. Or this is not just a Instagram account. I do have 9 people underneath me now. And so that moment, to the point where I've had friends and family ask, hey, do I have a job lined up for them? Versus when I used to walk into the room, friends would chant my name, Budget Dog, and, kind of mock at it. It's amazing to see just in a 3-year span of consistent quality content, helping other people, how far it's really come. And it's really encouraging to see. I don't think people realize how much time goes. I mean, I am 24/7 with the business at all times. I mean, it's here 9:42 in Central Standard Time. I've been going since 8 a.m. and I love it. I love talking about this stuff. I love engaging with smart people like you guys and helping other people. And it's just been amazing to see. And I think people would be surprised if they really put their head down, worked at something they loved, and put in an extra amount of hours. I don't keep my timesheet. I don't have a timesheet, right? I used to at Deloitte. I'd maybe fill in a couple extra hours from here and there, whatever the budget was. But at this point, I don't care how much time I work. I love what I do, and it's just been an amazing progression. And I want to shout out to one of my coaches, guys. I just noticed he's in here. The guy I was referring to earlier, who's literally changed my life when I'm talking the parabolic moment and other things, is Gabriel down here. He has been such a significant part of my business journey. I don't even have words for it, man. Like, I'm so grateful for him, like everything he's done for me. And he is top notch, just quality guy, but also just a mastermind. But finding people like Gabe have really put me in a position to do what I've done. It's not me. It's not, I know a few things here and there, but like, I think it's really leveraging other people, skill, expertise, and things that can help, put it all together and figure out kind of what works for the business as a whole. And I think that's kind of where we're at right now.
Shout out Gabe.
Yeah. If you haven't followed him, I already gave him a follow. So I sent him a request to speak, but I don't know if he would want to come up here.
Logan genius.
Yeah. Appreciate you joining us in the space, brother. Blade, you hopped up here, and then Davis put his hand up. So I'm going to go ahead and get to you guys. Blade, if you had a question.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I was switching my mic.
You're good. You just hopped up here and requested to speak. I just didn't know if you had a specific question. Okay. Well, Davis, you want to field it until Blade gets his mic together?
Yeah, you kind of already answered my question. So did Kevin. Hopefully Kevin comes back up, or maybe he's busy with something. But
Yeah, I'm back.
the gym is okay. No worries. The gym is super easy for me because it's a linear progression, it's measurable, and I can definitely see the results no matter what the time horizon is. But financial and life goals, I feel, are a little bit different considering that it's not always that exponential growth where you just see, all right, today this is linear progression. You're going to have days where things aren't going so well, or weeks where things aren't going well, or months, possibly even years. And then eventually all of the connections you've made and the time you put in pays out, but it might not be tomorrow.
Yeah, and that's what I see as the hardest part for a lot of people. My wife is this way. So she wants to see immediate result. Like if I start a business venture or do something, I know that it's an investment, right? And I'm playing the long game. But she would rather have the quick nickel than the slow dime, is what how she puts it. And so it's hard for most people if they don't see immediate results with things. A lot of people, I coach fitness clients for over a decade. I still do that a little bit, and now I do it with the business owners, right? And sometimes you put in work and you're doing all the things that Brennan talked about. You're putting in the long hours. You're doing extra. You're providing value, and things just aren't clicking in the time frame that you had expectations for. And I think that's part of the problem. Again, is I think most of the pain that people feel is because of expectations that they have around the outcome of something, which that's a philosophical topic we can get into a different time. But for this conversation, yeah, you're going to have extended periods of time where you're putting in work, putting in the effort, and it feels like things are just dragging along the bottom. But if you continue to do that, that's what yields the results. Like anybody that I've spoken to that's successful in any capacity will tell me that there were times they wanted to give up. They didn't think it was working. Sometimes you get some success right out the gate. And like Budget Dog talked about, most of the time you need to vet a market to understand that there's a need before you pull the trigger on something. I'm a proponent of that. But, and back to his point, it wasn't until October, it was almost 2 years for him before he really experienced that exponential growth. And it was probably a culmination of multiple things that he was doing and the right people and environment in his life. Is that true, Brennan?
Oh, 100%. I mean, the best way to look at it is like, people see these milestones people hit, and, you post on social media, and obviously as a big brand, I kind of share that stuff publicly, but I think what people don't see is the behind the scenes. I know that's kind of cliche to say, like, the iceberg below the water line, but that's where all the progress is made. And like, there's so many days I have so many headaches and so many, things go wrong, and I get 4 troll comments right after I get a bad email and a bad client. It's all, there's so many different things that could go wrong. But I think one thing I've noticed is like your ability to withstand resistance and like consistently, it doesn't matter how hard it hits you and how many times it hits you, just not falling down and just continuing, which again could be cliche, is the most impactful thing you'll ever do. And so like, so many times I walk, every single day, there's something that's going to, not go the right way. I've almost built that into my expectations. And I think that's kind of helped, because the hardest thing in the world is saying, hey, I'm going to put hundreds of hours into this project or business, and I don't know, there's no certainty that it works out. There's no certainty that it comes through. But somebody that's really passionate about what they do, they love what they do inside and out, and like from the good of their heart, puts the work in for multiple hours and builds connections and networks, good things are going to happen, I think, at the end of the day. And, there's no guarantee, of course. And that's the hardest thing, is I always wish there was a guarantee. I like to put in contracts some guarantee component to it. Like, I can't lose X amount, you know what I mean? But I think building up that resistance muscle, because you're going to face all sorts of setbacks and stuff. And if you can't handle that, you're going to fail. You just will, and you'll give up. And I think part of that is like the situation that's presented us, like with all the debt payoff, that was obviously a huge hurdle. Then obviously my daughter's stuff, like, if we were just going to throw in the towel, we'd be done by now. I can promise you that, because a lot of things have come our way recently from outside of business, just personal life, that's testing. But the people that succeed are the ones that say, I don't care how many times or how hard this is, I'm going to push through, and I am so in pursuit of my mission that I don't care. It's just fleas on, it's just a annoyance to me. It's just like, when's this going to be over? Let's move on to the successful part. That's the mindset I think you have to operate with.
Yeah, Brandon, I think you hit the nail on the head. And I come from a sports background. I both played and coached in the National Football League. And, I think the one word you're really hitting on is tenacity, right? Like, literally, I've seen dudes who are not talented, but they just literally don't give up. And eventually it's like, oh, wow, here it is. I made it, right? I kind of resonate with, what was that, Jay?
I was just saying Peyton Manning was like 3rd round draft pick, right? Like he wasn't supposed to be anybody, but
Great.
Brock
he's
Purdy.
goat. Like, his ethic, his work ethic. Same thing with Kobe. Like, I don't know if you haven't ever watched any documentaries of either of those two individuals, I would encourage you to do so. They're both phenomenal, and the message that they have transcends almost anything that you want to do.
I think that's what people love about sports, right? Like it's the themes that kind of just go across all areas of life. And forgive me if someone had said this earlier while I was on the phone. One thing that just stuck out to me, I think that kind of pushed me in this journey. I'm 29 right now. Back in college, I read Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. And just in line with what we were talking about, it was when I kind of grasp the idea of beginning with the end in mind, it really just radically changed my mindset and how I approach life. And I feel like I've heard that in different flavors from everybody here. And I just think it's fantastic that we're all kind of moving through life's goal setting with that kind of framework.
100%. Blade, you got your mic working?
Yes, I got it to work now. Sorry about that. I was having trouble with connection issues. But the question I have for y'all, so it's from a perspective like before you reach the point of success, like while you're in the trenches, what gets you up? What keeps you getting up early in the morning and keep going? I understand, like, for some people, like, you're already successful, so it's like, okay, you receive the snowball that's already, like, built up, so it's easy to talk from that standpoint. But how about when you was first starting out and things was building up before you start to get traction? What was keeping you going?
I think that's different for people. You got to find what it is for you, in my opinion. For me,
100%.
I was a bodybuilder for 10 years, and I needed a date that I needed to be in condition by, and if I didn't have a contest on the road, then I would kind of fall off of things. But I would wake up, and my first thought was, there's somebody outworking me right now that's going to be on the same stage. And that may or may not have been true, but I applied that, and that's what made me get my ass out of bed at 4:30 and go do an hour of cardio every day before I worked my 9 hours and went to school in the evening and trained. So sometimes it's anger, sometimes it's self-hatred. I've seen a lot of people that have insecurities drive them in the beginning to build habits. Sometimes it's purpose. So I'm at the point now where I want to help 1 million people become financially free. Like that is why I get up every day and provide value and do what I do. And why I'm building what I'm building with the mastermind and the DAO and the other things that I'm working on. But, and it may change throughout different periods of your life too. But I think if you can just instill habits and you have dedication, like the habits are what pull me through most of the time, because I had motivation for a period and I stuck to it. I developed habits, and then there's days where you don't want to do stuff, but you do it anyway because it's a habit. So that would be my advice there. I don't know what that is for you that's going to provide you that drive and motivation. Again, sometimes it's self-hatred or insecurities, or it can be a lot of different things. Purpose, maybe it's freedom. I've talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs on a couple other spaces, and like the way I look at that is people work their way from just getting by and the basic needs in their life, and then up to status. People want to look a certain way in society. The level beyond that is freedom. So you actually don't really care what other people think of you. You just want to be able to go and do what you want. And then like you have people that are billionaires like Elon Musk that really don't even care about the money. It's just a byproduct of their purpose that they're trying to fulfill. So again, just depends on where you are on that journey. Does that kind of give you some insight?
Yeah, actually, that helps out a lot. I like what you said there. Makes a lot of sense. Like it's kind of like a combination of all of that. It's like, goals, like, self-esteem, how people view you. Like it all makes sense. Like it's all clear now.
Hey, Blade, and I'll add to this. Just have a kid. I promise.
See, I was thinking that because I was like, if I had a kid, I'd probably be going like 100 times harder. But then I'm like, that's a huge expense and the long term like responsibility. I'm not ready for that.
Pretty your goal. I don't know that that's the one to do, but it will sure as hell drive.
It's a different type of motivation. I can tell you that. I'd say speaking of the insecurity, the self-hatred, that's interesting that you say that. One of the most influential people in my life, I think, is Alex Ramosi. I really, really respect his message. And you guys might know him. He's a big marketing guru. But 3 things he says he sees in almost every ultra successful person. The first one is crippling insecurity of some sort. And so that's a big one. It was kind of shocking to me when I heard that. I was like, that kind of makes sense. The second one was ability to sacrifice for long periods of time. And the third one was actually superiority complex. And he says he sees these traits in almost everyone that's successful. And I don't know if that's those traits within somebody get somebody up in the morning or keep somebody going like you were asking, but it was an interesting 3 bullet points he shared in one of his podcasts that kind of was very enlightening.
Yeah, Alex.
Yeah, he's got some good stuff. It's interesting, right? Like when I was pursuing football, I can very much speak to that. I kind of think of it now as burning on dirty fuel, right? For me, it was pride. Arrogance and pride was a big thing. And it honestly destroyed me eventually, right? To be quite honest with you. Because like any car, right? Like if you have a Ferrari, you're not gonna go put regular gas in it. You're gonna go put diesel or whatever, whatever finer fuel you have. And I've just found now where I'm at in my life as a man of faith, like I work unto excellence. So excellence is my purpose. It's how I approach my work. It's not something now where I feel like I need to work to be better than another person. Me being better than another person will be a byproduct of my pursuit of excellence. And if excellence is at the forefront, if attention to detail, if being a man of integrity is at the forefront of how I approach my work, approach my life, me out-competing, outworking another person will just be a byproduct of that.
I'm reading an interesting book. It's called The Alter Ego. I can't pull it up right now. I'll have to look at the author of it, but it was recommended to me by one of my mentors. And basically, like there's been a lot of successful people that have done difficult things by stepping into an alter ego that they create in their mind. That would personify whatever the traits are they're trying to use to execute whatever they're doing, right? So, and sometimes it's you need a trigger. A lot of professional athletes will do this. I played golf when I was younger, and I would see like they would do the pre-shot routine over and over and over again, and there would be something in there that triggered them to kind of step into a flow state. And so maybe it's you put something on, or it's a sound or something, but you can actually hypnotize yourself and train your mind to step into an alternate persona in different situations and be the person that it's still you, right? But in your mind, you're personifying whatever that alter ego is in that situation to accomplish whatever you're trying to.
And we might laugh, but I used to do that with Dragon Ball Z, bro.
Thanks, bro. I'm a big DDD fan. You and me just became a lot cooler.
Damn.
I'm not gonna lie, I still work on the theme song, bro.
Another thing, another thing that I'd like to add on top of all of this is that you have your own self-identity and persona for different situations. The majority of people do, but the other side of it is generally there's a different version of you living inside of everyone's minds. It might be the impression they had of you at a dinner somewhere, or maybe an outing or a party, and they might understand who you are, who you were 2 or 3 years ago or 5 years ago or in high school, but that's entirely different from the person you are now. But they haven't changed their mind about you because they haven't met the you that exists today. You're frozen in time for a lot of people.
That's a great point.
Kevin, you mentioned Dragon Ball Z, and I know Davis had his hand up, and I'm like, oh God, you just
No, I don't. I actually don't like Dragon Ball Z at all.
Oh, you're a nut.
Oh no, we can't be friends, Davis.
So
I think Pokemon takes the cake out.
Up out of here.
What? Pokemon is trash.
All right, now get out of here. Honestly, my favorite anime is Sea Control. The manga author for Sea Control used to work for the Lehman Brothers, and he based the whole story on it.
oh no, we're gonna get down the rabbit hole.
Deep now.
Right. Yeah, we're in the weeds.
Tax Tone, you came up here and haven't spoken yet, man.
How we doing, everybody? Nice to hear from you. I love the stories going on. I got nothing on my mind but taxes right now, baby. It's tax season. We're getting after it, just getting geared up for the night shift.
Don't worry, the IRS might get abolished if the Republicans
Yeah.
in their way.
Hey.
So.
Hey, I've been calling for this. I've been calling for this.
I think a consumptive tax makes so much.
I had this exact same tweet where I go, hey, taxes are a disincentive, right? So if we're disincentivizing production, income, isn't that kind of counteractive to economic growth? Whereas if there was a disincentive to consumption, wouldn't that potentially, be better? I totally believe.
I think it would be. I think, just depending on what that number is. I've seen numbers as high as 30%. I think that's ridiculous. But I think if you structure it properly, especially in light of what I deem to be the greatest transfer of wealth, probably a few months away from us right here with certain utility-based cryptocurrencies. I would say digital assets, cryptocurrencies. I think, we really have to be specific about what kind of language we use, because cryptocurrencies are going to be deemed securities, in my opinion, right? But you have digital assets, digital settlement assets, typically your ISO 222 tokens, and a lot of people are going to become very wealthy and see interest rates on their deposits, their accounts, their portfolios, the likes of which we haven't seen since the early 1900s, when you were seeing saving accounts with, returns of what, I don't want to misquote the number, but I think it was like 10% of something outrageous, right? Like you could literally earn 10% interest on a savings account. You know what I mean? And we're about to see that in a whole nother fashion here shortly. So
Would love to see that. Wow, that's crazy. You can't even imagine. I mean, don't even get me into crypto taxes. That's quite the issue. That's probably one of the biggest topics, at least with the IRS, man. You just got to incentivize the right things and make it a little more simple. I don't know if you guys have been calling the IRS recently, but it's been an absolute mess. You know what I mean? They just make it bigger and bigger every year. They make you file.
You could actually get in contact with them.
Not gonna lie though,
I talk to them almost
yeah,
every month.
recently, they've been a little better recently. The last 2 weeks, but man, like for a year basically, like at least, yeah, basically all 2022, they were not picking up the phones. You call.
They just need those 87,000 other agents.
I think they
Tax Tone.
canceled that.
you gotta
I
call.
think
You gotta call first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
They did.
And
They're
you
trying to get after those
have to
87,000
press 1,000 different buttons.
the $87,000 agents are going after the $600.
Oh yeah, exactly. Well, here's what they're doing is those PPPs, those ERCs. That's really what they need to go after, man. I've seen, some PPP fraud. I saw what it takes to apply for these things, and I know how easy it would be to just BS some forms or, like a lot of
Saw a guy get raided
yeah.
yesterday over I can't like confirm that's what that was, but I'm pretty sure that's probably what it was.
Dude, money was falling from the sky in 2021.
It was quite the opportunity for a, entrepreneurial accountant. But unfortunately, I saw a couple people that, I mean, they turned entire businesses into helping people get PPP. And then there was people that weren't even accountants or CPAs that have this, fiduciary responsibility out here saying, oh, you qualify. And they're not even really checking. You know what I mean? Saw a guy. So for PPP, for example, you have to have Schedule C, right? Self-employment income. If you have between 100,000 and 150,000, you get $20,000 out of this PPP. Once you get over, it phases out. If you're under, you get less from the PPP. This guy didn't even have a Schedule C, and his pastor was telling him he qualified, right? And that he was only going to charge him $8,000 for this $20,000 PPP that he was going to get him. He didn't even qualify.
I hope he degenerated all that money into therapy.
So
He could have got into a lot of things in 2020 with that and been just fine.
Bro, at December 2020, you could have put a blindfold on, thrown a dart at the wall, and made like 10x, bro.
Yeah, absolutely. So, man, my only position on taxes really is make it a little more simple, dude. I would not mind losing the majority of my business, if they made taxes a little more simple. Just save the stress. If you have to pay up the tax,
No, because
all good.
you do a lot of estate planning and other pieces of the financial plan, right?
Yeah, I saw I was going to get rid of the estate taxes as well. I think it was payroll and income, which those are some pretty big taxes right there. If they got rid of all of those, it'd be amazing.
Yeah,
I think it balances out because Americans would have substantially more money in their bank account.
Yeah, and they'd be trying to make more, trying to be more productive, more valuable to the market. Because that's what
I think taxes have gone a little bit too far. Property tax, taxes on the things that you buy, taxes on the things that you sell, taxes on the money that you make, taxes on your Social Security, which is the money that you make being worth less over time with inflation, and taxes from transferring money from your estate to your family members after you die. It's really gotten a little bit ridiculous.
Dude, somebody's got to pay for Nancy and Paul Pelosi's trips to Taiwan.
the private jet.
Well, that's so when you hit the big time, Davis, from your project, because I know you and Wealth Wolf and Jack's up here are going to do it. We'll get you hooked up with the trusts and the LLCs, the holding companies, all the CPAs here in this group. They will make sure that you're well taken care of.
Right.
Jax, you hopped up here. Did you have any specific questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to add it into the consumption tax conversation because that's really been interesting to me like the last couple of weeks. And I don't know, just as like a mental exercise on like what that would do to like, I guess purchasing patterns and like the way that people actually spend their money. And I wanted to see if you guys had any thoughts on that.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I just tax prone. Like if you disincentivized, if it was a higher tax rate on luxury items, or things that weren't necessities. Okay, so I don't think there should be a tax on food or water, maybe even shelter, right? Like that's a necessity. But as far as like things that are outside of those, I think that they could whack you with, a 15 or 20% flat tax across there. And I would much prefer that to the income tax, the Social Security, the Medicare, the Medicaid, and people that understand how that system works. Like you should own an LLC and do something as a side hustle. So
and if you make between $50K and $150K, you need to have an S corp. I mean, if people really think about how much tax Social Security is, right? The limits are over 1/6. What if you taxed the wealthy more for Social Security? Why are you taking Social Security on like the first $150,000 of your wages, right? Like think about that. Like people that have $100K in Schedule C income are paying a huge tax rate compared to how much income they have because they're paying 15.3% self-employment taxes on that 100K before they even pay ordinary income taxes, which can be another, $13,000, $14,000, $15,000. All of a sudden, you're paying a 30% rate on $100,000. I mean, dude, if you haven't made the estimated payments, you don't see that coming. I work with plenty of people who didn't see a $30,000 bill coming. I know people that are almost paycheck to paycheck, making $250K a year as a household, right? So if you have a $30,000 bill making $100K, I mean, dude, this tax system definitely needs to be changed, because to be honest, they say tax the rich, but then when you look at the actions and how much tax people are actually paying, I see those middle America, 50 to 150K a year, on just really cutting their teeth with their own business, paying some of the highest tax rates. And then W-2, of course, you're paying your ordinary income taxes and then 7.65% to Social Security on your W-2. I mean, so tax rich.
And you can have an LLC and elect to be taxed as an
S corp. Yep. If you're a business owner, make over 40K in just basically every state but Tennessee, look into a S corp. 100%.
Not to mention your health insurance goes up too. I mean, that's something that happened to myself. It's like, as a business owner, you should be incentivized. But yeah, you're 100% right with everything you said.
Yeah.
I got to bounce, but thank you all so much. This was awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
I got to out too. I'm gonna catch y'all later.
Appreciate you.
Max, to all of them here, for the people in the audience, can you discuss how you just laid that out, and explain like pass through income versus like, I don't think most people understand that, right?
Like the difference, S corp, Schedule C.
Yeah, and everybody sees like on, everyone's got on Facebook and Instagram, and that they see, younger generations like, oh, I started my LLC, and I don't think people understand.
Absolutely. Oh, I got this. So when you think about your company, there's a couple different tax statuses, right? So the different tax status, I want to say there's 4 tax statuses. There is an LLC. Excuse me, that is completely wrong. There's 4 tax statuses: a sole proprietor, there's a partnership, there's an S corp, and there's a C corp. Right? You'll notice that there is no LLC. That is not a tax status. LLC is not a tax status. LLC is actually a pretty modern invention. I think it's made in the 90s, became popular, where the IRS says when you're an LLC, you can actually you can choose which tax status you follow. You can choose when you get an LLC to be a sole proprietor. You can choose to be taxed as a partnership. You can choose to be taxed as an S corp or a C corp, right? So those are the 4 different tax statuses, where all of those statuses, except for C corp, have the concept of flow through taxation, right? So C corp is taxed at the entity level. But when you have a single member LLC, sole proprietorship, or S corp, or a partnership, the net income from this business is flowing through the entity and is landing right on your personal tax return, and you pay taxes at the personal level. So whatever your net income is, or your share of the net income is in your business, your entity, you pay for it on your personal taxes, your 1040 tax return. So it's really important to know those 4 tax statuses and the differences between how they're taxed, because an S corp can save people, especially if you're in that, business owner 50K plus range. It can help you save a ton in taxes, because those self-employment taxes, the Social Security taxes I was talking about, right? Those are levied on flow-through income from a partnership, flow-through income from a sole proprietor tax status. They're not levied on S corp net income. The reason why, they're taxed as dividends, right? It's taxed as distributions. If you receive dividends from a C corp, you pay ordinary income taxes on it. You don't pay self-employment taxes. It's the same way with an S corporation. When you receive your net income on your K-1, which is the form that's filed to flow onto your personal tax return, you pay taxes on it as though you're receiving dividend income, right? So you do pay some form of payroll taxes when you have an S corp. You're required to, but it doesn't have to be your entire net income. What you do is you pay yourself a reasonable salary. has to be reasonable in the circumstances. There's a couple different ways, to determine reasonability based on where you live, based on what you're doing, your involvement, time spent in the business, the responsibilities you have. You pick a reasonable salary. Let's say, continuing with the example of 100K net income, right? You're going to pay yourself a W-2 salary of 50K. Maybe 40K is better. Maybe 60K is, more reasonable in the circumstances. Let's pick 50K, which means you pay payroll taxes on that $50,000 of salary, right? $7,650, 50K salary. If you were a sole proprietor tax status, you'd be paying 15.3% on the entire $100,000. So by choosing the S Corp tax status, you just saved $7,650 in taxes. So that's essentially S Corp status, the different tax statuses for your business entities.
Yeah. So in your opinion, and this is probably not, this is selfish of me, at what income level for your business or EBITDA would you consider moving over to a C Corp?
So C Corp, I would just about not do that. So the only reason you would have a C Corp is actually not like a threshold of income. A C Corp is for going public. A C Corp is for raising funds. A C Corp is for maybe foreign entrepreneurs creating a American entity and optimizing their taxation. But a C Corp gives you the concept of double taxation because they're paying a flat, currently 21% tax on their net income. I think maybe it went up to 28 or something like that with Biden. 28% tax on the net income of the C Corp, right? That does not include any amount of compensation to the shareholders of the C Corporation, right? Say the C Corp has $1 million of net income. It's paying this 28% tax on that $1 million. Now you've got, $720,000 to go to the shareholders. So if you send a dividend of $100,000 to the shareholder, like I said, the dividend is you're paying taxes on it, right? Ordinary income taxes. So you're paying taxes at the entity level, and then when you receive compensation or you receive the net income from that C Corp, you're paying taxes on it there as well. So even if you make $1 million, $10 million, likely S Corp is going to be better because you don't have to pay that flat 21%. But if you wanted to go public, if you wanted to have over 100 shareholders as the limit for an S Corp, if you wanted to, bring on foreign, partners and optimize for taxes, then I would have a C Corp.
I was going to say, so like the situation that I see where that makes sense is like Mark Zuckerberg pays himself a salary of $1.
Yep.
And then he has stock options, right? And then he's able to take collateralized loans against the equity in Facebook, and then deploy that capital in other places without actually selling any of his shares or making any income from the company.
Yep. Think about the taxation of that. You have a $1 salary, so you didn't even pay any taxes on that, but you own, I don't know how much he owns of Facebook, but, your net worth is, whatever, $50, $100 billion, and you haven't paid any taxes on that wealth whatsoever because it's been purely growth of the equity that you own. You haven't taken any salary at all. Exactly what you said. This is what all of the billionaires, multi-millionaires do, is they take the value of their assets and they lend against it because you're now liquidating the value of your equity without having to actually recognize that income on your taxes. You don't actually sell the equity. It could grow more. You don't want to pay taxes on it, but you can get that liquidity by taking out a loan against it without paying any taxes. And now you have, a whole lot of cash to spend.
Yeah.
I'll bet you he's the first one though to say the rich should pay their fair share.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. It's like increase income taxes. Be my guest. You think the billionaires are actually paying income taxes, right? Maybe a little bit of capital gains when they got to sell, but there's plenty of ways to mitigate capital gains, and again, all these guys are just getting rich off of equity growth. If you're making billions of dollars, it's in equity growth. Very few.
Meanwhile,
cash flowing.
you got Lord Elon just dumping shares all of last year.
Yeah, he paid the most
Here's a good point.
individual of ever last year.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I mean, ridiculous. I would love to see his tax return, because here's the thing: is where was he dumping those shares to? Where was he dumping those shares? Was he selling them on the open market, or was he potentially donating them to a charitable cause? Right? Think about that. There's a
Oh, yeah.
tax
Tax bill.
Definitely no donations. Those suckers hit the market.
He liquidated the market. But to that point, and we don't have this
or did he
professional.
donate them, and then where he donated them to, they liquidated?
Well, I think he actually owed and paid in. But we were supposed to have Brandon Cootie with us tonight, who is my funds and foundation and nonprofit guy. And he could have really expanded on what you were talking about there.
I mean, the point I was trying to make, because remember when he was talking about like ending world hunger or whatever, it only cost $6 billion, talking about making a multi-billion-dollar donation and everything. I totally remember news of Elon donating however much stock. Think about where he might have put that to. He could have contributed that stock to a private family foundation, a donor-advised fund, where he has a significant influence over how those funds are used. So yes, it's going towards charitable purposes, but think the Gates Foundation, think the Clinton Foundation. You don't think there's some other agenda going on. They're advancing their interests. They're advancing their, you know what I mean? Like, here's what the billionaires are doing: is they're paying zero taxes, yet cashing in on their money and using it for leverage to make business moves, to make networking moves, social moves through their foundations, and they're getting to deduct it on their taxes, right? So think about it. You have unrealized gains of $1 billion on this $1 billion of stock, right? And instead of selling it and then using the capital, you donate it to your own private family foundation, and then you get to pay zero taxes on it. You also get a deduction at the fair market value. So now you have $1 billion deduction, and now you get to go use the money out of your private family foundation. Of course, you're following all the compliance, all the rules. That's just how you play the game at the highest level.
Which, honestly, and this is something I want to do, is start foundations and then donate to them so that I can then allocate that capital in a way that I feel is more appropriate than the U.S. government. So I'm with you in the fact that they probably are using that capital to, do things for themselves selfishly. But I think there's some good things that come out of that as well.
Exactly. I mean, have the good intentions, serve those good intentions. You're going to get a lot of personal joy out of it along the way. I'm certainly not trying to, act like their methods are bad. They are what they are. It is the game, and that's just how you play it. Anybody can play it like that.
That's something you're looking at, Brennan, long term?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was actually going to add to this. I was going to ask actually the ethical, if you guys had any I guess per se, the opinions on that type of activity and how you guys feel. I know it's a very heated debate. A lot of people argue about it. But actually, instead of that, I was going to go to see if any people in this audience had questions. Maybe we could answer them directly.
Yeah, I'd love that. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and request, and I'll pull you up here, and we can hang out for another. How long do you want to go?
I mean, I'm good for another 10, 15 minutes if that's cool with you guys.
Yeah.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah. No, I love the question, Brennan. I think that's definitely very important to consider. And I think it's a scale, right? You can certainly get some level of, personal enjoyment out of it. That's part of why you're doing that altruistic, charitable purpose. But, that charitable purpose has to be front and center. That has to be the number one over somebody's, enjoyment. So that's where I stand on that. Definitely an interesting kind of debate.
Yeah, we're looking up at setting up the mastermind that we've created as a foundation, and then funding a endowment with the dues that would then provide liquidity for the exit on investments that the mastermind would make in the DAO that we'll have deals going to. So still working through the logistics on that, but yeah, if anybody has any questions, happy to pull you up. We've got some very valuable knowledge of here for anybody that has tax questions, business questions, wealth management, estate planning, basically anything to do with financials. I think we've got the people up here that could field it. Crypto, I'll take that one. Davis will too.
I see a lot of people in the crowd. I see Vaughn, I see Matthias, I see Russ. I don't know. It's a big long list. We got a lot of people in here now.
Yeah, I was excited to see the turnout for it, man. Again, appreciate you joining us on the space and everybody that's been in here tonight. I always love getting these type of spaces together and the discussions that come out of them. There's a lot of golden nuggets, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. Thank you for the invite. Thanks to everybody that is tuning in right now.
There we go. There's a request. Mary, how are you doing?
Hello, everyone. Good evening. First of all, Budget Dog, I am in your private Discord. I stalk you. I just want to say that since you can hear me, that I write to you a lot on Instagram. God bless you. So an honor to actually be able to have you hear me, but kudos to you for being such an amazing father. Your little girl is the most beautiful thing in the world. I talk to my family all the time about, just what an amazing person you are. And I'm so happy that you were able to move. And a lot of the times when I feel that, I have something heavy on me, I think about all the stuff that you're going through. I think sometimes people forget that, even though you guys are very knowledgeable in your own things, you're still humans, right? And you have a lot of things that you kind of have to deal with, and you still have to show up every day and have the happy face because you're running a business, right? So if your business is not running, the money's not coming in. So I am I read a lot, I'm one of your premium members in the Discord, so I read everything you write. But my biggest question is, so I'm learning, I'm in the midst of learning. So my biggest question is, everybody talks about, how the wealthy, quote unquote, and funny enough, my sister's a CPA, but she does auditing. She's not into any of this. But, so a lot of people talk about, building a trust, right? Building this trust where you can, in the long term, have this compound interest rate where you're building your wealth. And I don't know if this is true, right? I haven't really, but everybody talks about it. So then you're able to borrow money, right, from yourself. And obviously all that money goes back into you. But then I wonder, how is that different from borrowing from your 401k, which I know, Brennan, I know you're all against, and most people are don't ever borrow from your 401k. So quick thing about me is that I have a lot of investments in Apple, a lot. That's my number one. I am very into NFTs. The PFP that I have is part of a big NFT project where they're coming out with a movie, and they name one of the characters after me, which I'm very bullish. But I'm not really heavy into buying a lot of Ethereum, buying a lot of Bitcoin, because unfortunately, a lot of people in America, I have a heavy debt in student loans. So obviously that's almost my number one priority. But then because the interests are so low, I'm trying to accommodate for other things. So how does someone find someone that can help them build a trust? Because a lot of people also say, be careful. If they don't set up the trust right, it could work against you. So, as an amateur person, I know the basics, but it's scary. And my sister works with a lawyer, but it was a different type of trust. And, because she's in a different, in a different scenario of life where she's, she has bigger investments. Like some of you guys, she's married, has 2 kids. It's a different thing. But it's how do you find the right resources to get a trust? I listen to a lot of Budget Dog. I always listen, but there's just certain things that you want to ask, why would I not want to borrow, quote unquote, from my 401k where I have so much money to pay off some of my debt that has higher interest? I don't know if you guys heard, I'm sure you guys did, my interest rate on my loans, I don't know if people noticed that, they doubled. They were 6% on my student loans, and I was checking 12%. And of course, they're not going to tell you. I don't know if it's something that people know, but I was I told my brother, did you notice? He's
Do you have federal loans or are they private?
both, but the biggest one is, I'm trying to think, which one, the one that went up was private. Yeah, private.
Yeah, I would think they probably have a variable rate. So I'll
I kind of threw a lot there. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'll tackle the trust question first, and then go after my opinion. And Brennan may be different than mine on the 401k. So there's a lot of different types of trusts, and you want to deal with a lawyer that's competent in the type of trust that you want to set up. So it depends on the type of assets you have. I don't really look to set up a trust until you're north of $500,000 in net worth.
Okay.
That's kind of the point that I start looking at that, and it makes sense to pay the fees that are associated with a lawyer to set that up correctly. My dad did pass away last year, and so I had to deal with his assets, which were outside of a trust, and had to go through probate and a bunch of other things. So I'm passionate about that.
Sorry to hear that.
That's all. It's how life goes. It's time for everybody to go when it's their time. So I don't have any hard feelings over it. The other piece of that, borrowing against your 401k, I think there are times and opportunities when that can be appropriate. When COVID happened, they allowed you to forego they had deals where you could cash out and not get the fee, but borrowing against your 401k, I think, can be a good resource if you're going to put it somewhere that's going to generate a substantial return, more so than what it's doing in the stock market. And this is what the wealthy do. They borrow against assets that they own that will continue to appreciate in value over time. And then as the asset grows, it takes less and less of that asset to pay off the loan that you took. And so with you being an Apple primarily, I think that's a fantastic option. They pay dividends, yeah?
Yeah, they do. They do.
So that's fantastic. You may be able to leverage that. I don't know that I would do it to pay off your student loans. That's a pretty low yield and return on that capital, 6 to 12%. I would just continue to make payments. But if you had something else that could yield more upside than that, like if you found something that was 20, 30, 50% ROI in a 2 or 3 year span, that makes sense in my opinion. Do you have any thoughts on that, Red?
Yeah, I just want to first off say thank you for all the kind words in the beginning. And I like how we have the purple heart here as one of the emojis, because that's actually the color of what Dravet syndrome, which is what Logan has. So I really appreciate the kind words to begin with. Secondly, the 401k. So as far as the 401k loan goes, I'm not a big fan of it because of a few things. If you were to leave your job, well, first off, I think the most obvious is you're pulling out from your financial future, in my opinion. So I think that's always the kind of last ditch effort. I think the second thing is, hey, if you leave that job, you're on the hook for that loan, usually within like a 60-day period to pay in full. Now there's limits to them. I mean, most of them have maybe a $50,000 limit or something along the lines. Every plan is going to be a little different, but I just be very careful. I think it's a better idea to kind of strategically put together a financial plan that with your current capital, crafting that debt payoff plan per se. And I think that's probably the plan of attack. That's my kind of insight onto the 401k. Now the trust is a whole different thing. It's kind of like, how do you find a competent trust attorney or whatever? We're actually in this process now. So the way I found him, funny enough, was through Twitter. And I have a lot of different, connections here that I have a lot of trust in that recommended this individual. So I think a big thing is networking. I know that sounds simple, but I think talking with people that maybe had experience or you trust, and no pun intended there, that, where they've gotten actual legitimate results, they have a legitimate, designation for what you're trying to accomplish. I think it's the way to go. I mean, I feel comfortable with the guy I've met with is just because I've talked to a lot of different people. I'm a very people person. I like to talk to people and have a networked connection and stuff. And that's usually how I find most people I work with in general. Social media has obviously amplified that on a whole nother level. That's been amazing. I think that's the plan of attack. And you can obviously reach out to me directly, and I can help you kind of find somebody.
That's awesome. Thank you. If I could ask just one more question, then how about people borrowing from their stocks? Because I was reading that too. I'm just trying to get myself to where, I don't. So when I was in college, I couldn't get a job because I was overqualified when I got my degree, which is a whole nother. And so I survived off of a credit card for a long time. And that credit card to me has been what I call my child support. I don't have any kids, but it's like the thing that, I cannot avoid. So I thought to myself, how can I utilize some of my money, my stocks? I was reading about people borrowing money from their stocks, but again, I don't really know about it. And then I thought maybe borrow from my 401k, but I do know that if for some reason you left your job, you're responsible to pay. So I can get rid of this, this credit card that's for every dollar is taking 20 cents out of it's just, I know it's horrible, it's like, so that's why I try to figure out ways where, how can I, get rid of that? But
Mary, let me
Focus on paying that off first.
Let me give you some I'll give you access directly to my course. That's going to help you from a kind of a fundamental way of approach to this attack. So just give me a DM. I'll give you free access to that course. So I want you to really attack this. I think the biggest thing when it comes to, all these strategies you've kind of mentioned or potential strategies, I think a lot of that's complexity. And I think this is actually a simple problem. And I don't want to marry complexity and simplicity together, because I think if we just take the simple route and we do the fundamental kind of approach to paying off this debt, I can almost guarantee that you're going to be way more effective and impactful with that versus going with all these borrowing strategies, borrow to pay out, I think that's too complicated at the end of the day. And I think we need to simplify. And that's kind of my message across the board for financial stuff is simplify layman's terms. Let's just make this easy. Let's map out a plan to pay this off, and let's not get into all these complicated strategies. And while I respect the all of that, the education that comes with that, and there are some routes to take or potentially take for some individuals, I think at the end of the day, for most people, it should be just a simplified old school method that fast forwards your debt payoff. And I am able to do it with a lot of people in my group, as well as within the course that I'll give you access to make sure that you speed this up in the right way.
Awesome. I hope it's not the one that you pay monthly for, because I've been paying.
Oh no, that's the academy.
Because I like everyone, I work, and so it's like, I wanted to DM you because I know you said some of your rates were going up tomorrow, but then I feel guilty, and I know you guys said to invest.
You got it on me. It's on me.
Oh, well, thank you. Because I was like, I'm trying to get better financially. I mean, I'm good. I'm not paycheck to paycheck, but I don't want to have that that weight on me. And then I was like, okay, let me not keep on investing. To me, is spending more money on courses and get myself more in debt. So I really like how you guys said you kind of have to invest in yourself to get better, right?
Mm-hmm. John, or were you? I think OD to.
Yeah, that's me.
You were first.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I didn't know if John wanted to go first or.
I think you go first. You can go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for having me. 3 things. So the first, I'm actually super excited, Jake, for your SPV talk on the 4th. I was a decentralized finance strategist for a mortgage bank, and we were looking at liquidity pools for collateralizing some of our scratch and dent loans. So that's something where we're kind of working against core business interests. So there wasn't as much budget with the turn of interest rates, but it's definitely something institutions are trying to get their hands on. There's a lot of services surrounding SPV maintenance for securitizations that just aren't available without also taking on lending from banks, such as a trustee agent. So I think that there's been a lot of things that we've all been trying to figure out around that space in my past life out in New York. And the second thing, so I like to think of financial investments in 2 different realms. One is a cost reduction function, so looking at tax planning, all that kind of stuff. And the second as maximizing your upside potential, creating that serendipitous opportunity, and more so just trying to gain more and more equity exposure. I found obviously a lot of people do that through either building their own businesses or acquiring businesses, and I'm going down this acquiring business route. But I'm really curious in that the first equitable ventures that people are having or that you've experienced in your own network, is that done out of, I have this intellectual interest and I've discovered that for some reason people really need floor vents and I'm just super passionate about floor vents? Or is it more so hey, I found a deal that really just fits my box, and this is something that I'm going to run through my pipeline because it feels good. I like the people involved. I really would be interested in your guys' first venture. And the last and third thing is I'm exposed to a lot of like startup equity things, pieces here and there from prior work experiences. And some of that, they'll have like private markets for selling or for even, I know that when you first get that, there's some sort of filing you have to do to make sure that it's taxed on its initial value rather than its later value. So I'm wondering if you've collected any, private, equity over the lifetime of your career and how it is that you've gone to maintain that if you're either keeping it or selling it into private markets. So the last two things, just being how is it that you're finding or how has it that you found your first like a real serious venture where you're taking on more risk than you ever have before? And then the second being how are you maintaining your private equity pieces, whether that be paperwork or or different markets that you're engaging with for those?
Wow. Fantastic questions. So I'll tackle the second question first. It tends to be passion projects for people. And often I find that the people that I'm around will purchase businesses as bolt-ons to their current existing business to add value that way. Or they're just traditional kind of boring businesses that that check all the boxes, like you said, that they'll acquire. So sometimes it's not flashy. I talk about this a lot. I want to own businesses or assets that pay for my liabilities. So maybe you acquire car washes to pay for your car payment. You buy multifamily properties to pay for your house payment. You have another cash flow business that pays for your lifestyle and allows you to travel. And then the other piece of that with the equities. So I've actually not leveraged this to probably the full capacity that I could in my current consulting business. I normally just take a fee, even though Roland Frazier has encouraged me to take equity. So if you're very good at whatever you do, and you can add value to a business, or maybe again you're that bolt-on, and you are looking for other businesses that you want to have equity in, you could then take that skill or what you've built and then go present that and create a deal with another business to get some equity in it. I see often that people do creative deals. So let's say most of the people that I'm dealing with are 45 to 60 years old and they're ready to retire, right? And most of the time they want a lump sum of cash, and sometimes they'll do earnouts. And so as an example, like let's say you had a tanning salon, just for an easy one, and they've got a couple locations and they want $2 million for both the locations, but they're willing to take $400,000 up front. You might go look at an adjacent industry and another business that's in that geographical area that you could cross promote the customer base from either one of those companies to one another, and then go, negotiate with them, say, hey, look, I'll give you 20% of this business for $400,000. And if they've got the cash, that's something that they would love to do, because then they have a piece of your business and again can cross market between, maybe they have hair salons or microblading or their massage, whatever they might be, that would fit the same demographic as the tanning salons. So I see that done often in creative deals in order to gain equity. And you can do that. You could be the person that, finds the deal and then negotiates that other piece and doesn't have any money in the deal and ends up with 80% equity in that other business. There's a lot of different ways to do that. But as far as maintaining it, I have not sold any of the equity that I have in the multiple companies that I do have equity in. But there may be points in the future when I do that, just depending on how things go. Some of those companies have IP that would be very sought after by companies that are largely relevant in some spaces, and I feel that there may be a potential buyout in the future, and I would like to hold on to at least some equity in those businesses even after that. I see often that business owners that have developed a business that's, you know, $50-100 million in worth, they may take capital off the table and partner with larger conglomerates to help scale their business even further. Actually had this happen with a business owner I was working with about 6 months ago. He took $48 million off the table, and then bought back with some of that to maintain majority share in the company. But that was purchased by a significantly larger company that's in almost all states at this point. So that's kind of a shotgun deal there that I went through. But did that answer partially what you wanted?
Yeah, that it really provided that kind of the North Star actually becomes, maximizing the equity that you already do have. And that's why I think getting started can be intimidating. Everyone, probably has that scary feeling at first, but, going from a very, very good, W-2 path where it is at your really great IC. Right now, I work with like VC firms, and I'm a data practitioner, looking at all the different ways that different data projects can actually help grow the businesses within their portfolio. Except the transition there to actually, deciding, hey, I'm going to actually own car washes, going from, high tech jobs. It feels like such a leap because it's just it's such a lateral move in some ways that you kind of have to regain your footing. It's a whole new world. So I appreciate that. But also I'm really excited by the prospect of being able to, connect things together in a way that you can actually capture more upside from, rather than just, oh, this is super interesting. So thank you so much for all that information.
Yes, ma'am. Fantastic questions. Did anybody else on the panel? I see Wealth. You guys.
Yeah. I was just curious, but I think she just answered the question. Odetta, we should definitely connect. That was interesting. There's a lot to unpack in those 3 questions. I think Jake did a good job of explaining that, but my initial question was going to be, are you trying to raise capital? You mentioned, I don't remember which part of the question, but I think you pretty much just summed that up. So you work for a VC firm, so I was just curious.
Oh yeah, actually I'm independent. I work for like a few different VC studios. So one of the things that's been happening is venture capitalists will create these studios in more like rural areas. For example, I'm based out of Wisconsin, and there's some places in Oshkosh and Green Bay and other areas, but like these aren't huge, these aren't tier 1 cities, they're like tier 3, but they'll create a shared resource pool. So they'll go ahead and they'll hire like a brand manager, or they'll go ahead and they'll hire like me, a data engineer and scientist. And they say, okay, well, this is the kind of professional that a few of our companies are going to need, but rather than each individual company footing the bill, the payroll bill, we're going to go ahead and split it among those different things. And so in that I'm on, payroll, just 1099, previously W-2 out in New York, but now coming back home to the great outdoors here. So that's kind of been my journey so far, but I've been very strongly trying to, push myself in the direction of including more equity in the compensation structure. I'm just, trying to figure out the best way to do that. Cause these aren't car washes, and, sometimes they go to the moon, and other times they crash really hard. So
if you haven't looked into Roland Fraser's academy, it's called Epic. I think you would find a lot of value there.
Thank you. I'll have to look at that. For some reason, the name is really familiar, but, probably was a previous rabbit hole, and then I just abandoned it. So I'll have to take another look.
He's not the best looking fellow, but the value that he provides on social media is fantastic. And I do not, for the life of me, understand why he doesn't have more of a following.
Well, I'm about to be a +1.
I wonder that same thing about myself every day, Jake.
But you're good looking, man. So, no.
Wait, which one is?
The cartoon. He's the cartoon over here. I guess we'll get to John. John, you've been so patient. I appreciate you, man. What do you got?
Shout out Longmont, Colorado, too, by the way, John. Shout out.
Hey, yeah. Well,
Hey guys, really quick, I gotta dash out, but thanks for having me again. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate you hanging out with us, brother. Sorry it ran so late.
No, all good. It was great talking with you guys, and thanks for everybody attending. Feel free to reach out whenever, guys.
Definitely will. Thank you.
See you guys.
Have a good night.
okay, Dork, got the floor.
Tax question I'll
You-
hop in too, but if it's not, I'm probably gonna hop out too. Go get right back for the night shift, baby.
Yeah,
Tax season.
let's get it.
Yes, sir.
All right, John, is it tax
Yeah, this
related?
is a tax-related question.
Too bad, tax tone.
Yeah, come on, I'm ready.
Okay, so I started business 2 years ago, and this was the first year was a little bit profitable, just broke even. This year was more profitable, and I had two choices filing taxes this year. Basically, do I keep the cash and pay taxes in profits? And the reason I decided to do that was because I want to be a homeowner eventually. So I'm trying to build up a good resume when I go apply for a home loan, and have a profitable business, not just a business that generates cash flow, but actually profits on my financial resume per se. But I'm kind of having like buyer's remorse, having to like cut a check to the government when knowing like I could have used that money to reinvest back in my business, and scale the business larger through the one thing I would have done is like a 179 exchange for a work truck. I'm blue collar. I do heating and air conditioning. But I was curious, like, what's your thoughts on the strategy that I took, and had I gone the other way? Do you any feedback on that?
Well, let's definitely drill down on that 179. First, I want to say that's one of the least favorite things I like about taxes is when you're trying to apply for a mortgage, the more income you show on the on your tax return, of course, the more of the loan you're going to qualify for. And that sounds certainly all good and dandy, but then you become a business owner and they want to see more W-2 where you could, have less W-2 and pay less taxes, have more capital to go towards, a house or anything like that. And you have to voluntarily choose to pay more taxes to show more income to qualify for more of a mortgage. It just sucks because you end up having less money to deploy towards a house because you have to pay more taxes. So, I know that they got but it just sucks that when you're in that position that's, you got to pick one. As for your strategy, it sounds like you could have qualified for bonus depreciation, 179 accelerated depreciation. You chose not to because you wanted to have more income to qualify. It's exactly the situation, it sucks to be in. Fortunately, sounds like you still have time to amend if you wanted to, or, the benefit of not accelerating your depreciation is now you get this depreciation in future years. So, let's say you have a $100,000 vehicle. Instead of taking $100,000 of depreciation first year, you take, essentially $20K over 5 years. It's a little bit accelerated anyway through what's called double declining balance depreciation, but still, it's much more evenly spread out instead of $100K in 1 year. So if there was a significant need for capital that you had, if there was, some strategic play that you could make by freeing up more cash or having more cash right now, you for sure have the option to amend. Otherwise, if you still have that truck in service, on the bright side, positive to not accelerating your depreciation is now you get current year depreciation and next year depreciation and the year after.
What if you could put out a strategy for somebody that does own their business that wants to qualify for a mortgage within the next 2 years? What does that look like?
That looks like proactivity, right? Be proactive in knowing what you need to show on your taxes, because this is the exact situation that you're in. Kind of proves my point, because you're experiencing like, man, did that even help me qualify for more of a mortgage? Or maybe I don't even go to buy now, and I paid more taxes to qualify more for a mortgage, where I still would have qualified for the same loan and same rate, even if my taxable income was $20K less, right? So It looks like communication with your lender. It looks like knowing kind of the targets that you want to hit. You know, if you really need to, and you know for sure you need to, for sure you get a lot more benefit out of paying the more taxes now, saving some depreciation for later, and now you just saved, you know, a 0.25% interest rate, or, you know, you avoided PMI, you know, because you were able to do a whole 20% down payment. It totally makes sense to pay more taxes, you know, in that sense. But it wouldn't if you're not certain you're gonna, you know, go for a mortgage, or if you don't need that higher income to qualify for the mortgage. So just know what number you need to get, so you don't go, oh, well, I have no idea what number I need to get. I'm just gonna, you know, pay as much taxes, have as much income as possible. That's my best advice there.
Good. So you could, I just want to work through this on the tax side because it's something that I'm thinking about doing. So if you're taxed as an S corp, you pay yourself a reasonable salary. You take dividends out of the business, that's income also. When they're qualifying you for the mortgage, would it be in your best interest to take more dividends and pay less tax and still have that income, or raise your W-2 or the salary that you're paying yourself?
If any mortgage lenders want to come in and write me where I'm wrong here, feel free to. You know, I'm looking at it more from a tax side. Is, you know, you want to save more in taxes, so have less W-2 salary. I want to say that the weight when lenders are evaluating your credibility, they're going to weigh stronger W-2 salary over a business, because a business is far less stable in terms of your income, so they can rely on those income figures less, right? So they certainly will weigh W-2 more. Again, it's about the communication with your lender, because if you need that W-2 higher to qualify for better terms, yes, it makes sense. But if it's not actually going to make a difference in your terms, you know, you pay yourself $10,000 more in salary, you just paid $1,530 in taxes when you didn't have to. You know, if it really gives you better terms, you know, save interest long term, you'll probably save more than that $1,500 of taxes you pay. But again, you know, if it's not certain to benefit you, then, you know, I wouldn't just voluntarily pay the extra taxes.
That makes a lot of sense. John, does that help you?
Yeah, that's a lot of help. Thank you. You've reinforced my buyer's remorse.
Well, at least you get that depreciation in future years. And if you really needed to, again, you can still amend. So you can go back and choose to, you know, 179 that asset, and you can get the IRS to send you a check. It might take, you know, a couple weeks. It might cost some money to, you know, to submit the amended return, but that is an option.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, of course. Any other tax questions? I got to hop into some returns.
Yeah, I think that's where we're going to call it for tonight anyway. Really, just again, I appreciate everybody that's joined us this evening and been a speaker and provided value and all the insights that have been shared. This has been a fantastic space in my books, and we look to do it again. Really, you know, thanks Tax Tones, thanks Wealth Wolf, everybody that asked questions, Budget Dog, he's already left for the evening, Kevin, who's also left for the evening. Hopefully we'll have some more of the professionals that I work with on a regular basis inside the family office up here with these guys in the future, and we're able to provide more value for y'all.
Thank you for the invite, Jake. Much appreciated. Thanks everybody for listening. Hopefully we provided some value. Of course, you know, you guys can DM me, DM Jake, etc.
Tax team, you killed it, man.
Yeah,
man.
Okay, man.
Thank you. Much appreciated, guys.
Cool.
Thanks,
I think
guys.
that's going to do it for us. Y'all have a wonderful evening, and we'll see y'all on the next one.